Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be continuing our little adventure with the Cessna 172 using the real world procedures with my kind of story along the way. We're going to be doing some cross country and then we're going to make our way over to Hartford, do some quick little landings over there, and then call it a good day. Let's get started. So if you were following along last time, your aircraft should be in pretty good shape. Everything should be all started. Our engine should be running smoothly. All the switches should be in the correct position. We've got everything basically ready to go for that. So when we're ready to get takeoff, of course, there's a few things we need to do, and we always think lights, camera, action. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure, first of all, my transponder is running. So I'm going to set this to altitude. That's going to be my camera. My lights, I'm just going to flip on my landing light real quickly here. And then, of course, action just means we hit the gas. Since we're at an uncontrolled airport at Wyndham here, we'd be doing one of these things, and of course my co-pilot would be doing the best they could as well, to try to look behind them and try to identify if there was any traffic in the pattern. Today there is none, so what we would do, of course, is Wyndham traffic, Cessna 64, taking off runway 27 west departure, Wyndham. We kind of make our little announcements. We kind of sneak onto the runway just like this. Again, I give it just a little tap of power. It does not take very much. Always be checking. We do not need flaps for this. One thing that you can do is identify the folks who are 172 general aviation folks from your airliner folks. Your 172 folks who basically almost knock a light off by doing this. And they try to get as much runway as they mechanically can get behind them. Even though this runway is plenty long enough for us, we would not be wasting time as far as that goes. Go ahead and line up just like that. That's the center line. One last check to make sure everything's running smoothly. Feels good, feels good. And we would go ahead and let our passengers know it's quiet time. We go ahead and apply full power, wait for it to catch, and release the brakes. So at this point, of course, we have a very, very slight crosswind. So we'll be compensating by tipping our controls a little bit into the wind. Staying on that center line. So much easier to do in the real world. There's our 55. We give it a gentle tug. And it's going to come up pretty smooth on its own, just like that. Delightful.
Brainerd Airport Information Kilo, 1200 Zulu. Wind 28. Visibility, Niner. Sky condition clear.
What are you doing?
Altimeter 2.
That's interesting. All right, so we take off. One of the things is something like that did happen during takeoff. You would not fiddle with it. You'd wait until you get to a much safer spot to do it. All right, we are in the air. Welcome to Wyndham. Like I said, this is a nice little area to fly. There's a lovely little reservoir right off our right wing. Right off our right wing, and we'd be on our way. First things first, when we're climbing with any airplane, we always want to be imagining what we're going to do when the engine dies. So the first thing I'd be doing is going, that looks good. That looks good over there. It's tolerable. I'm at an altitude where I can go around if I had to. That field's pretty garbage. I don't want to land on the water. And we basically start making our way towards our destination. Generally, you don't want to do any turns until you're about 600 or 700 feet above ground level. Again, ground level here is about 280 feet. So we get, we're plenty, about 1,200 feet here. One of the things I really like about this version of the 172 is, man, does this thing climb nice. Again, I've been in 172s that you get 650 feet per minute, and that's considered top. And all we're going to do is continue climbing. We're going to be constantly looking out for traffic. I can't say this enough. When you're flying within the real world, especially on a day as crisp as this, everybody would be out with their airplanes. We'd have to keep a very, very, very close eye out for them. We're climbing at about 80 knots here. Everybody's going to be screaming at the screen saying, you should be using your VUI, to which I would say, not necessary. The reason it's not necessary is because this is a relatively short flight, so I'd rather take advantage of my speed versus maximum performance climb. One of the things that I found many, many moons ago is the POH is wonderful. It has many, many good numbers, and a lot of times you stick to them. But whenever you're dealing with something like a hot day, you can't use any of those numbers because you'd overheat the plane on the way up, kind of a thing like that. So we'll go ahead and settle the plane out. So the nice thing about the G1000 display there is you can see very, 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 very clearly exactly what we need to do to get there. And again, you're constantly looking out the window, finding a place to land. That looks pretty good to me. Let's look over here. We can't turn around. That field looks pretty good, although the field would probably be awful to land on. Again, you can just enjoy this part. So the cool thing here is you really be stomping on that foot right now. That left turning tendency would be pretty darn intense. You get to your cruise altitude, you just gently push forward. One of the things that I always would do whenever working with this, of course, is I give the plane a few moments to settle before playing with power. A lot of people are like, I'm going to go right to 2,500 RPM. It'll be great. You can do that, but you're going to find that you're going to have to adjust things about 30 more times if you do that. Getting a little bit of that nice turbulence, that's fine. All right, looks good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the power back. We're going to come down to about 2,500 RPM. Now, these would be things we'd calculate in advance before we do anything here, but that's perfectly fine. 2,500 RPM. Perfect. Now, the cool thing here is that this aircraft has a great automatic pilot, and you can see the flight director is doing a pretty good job right now of giving us some advice on what we need to do with the plane to get that last, 50 feet kind of a thing. And there's Coventry Lake up on your left, by the way. That's awesome. And you can see Bolton Lake also for those of you who are sightseeing. Great stuff. Absolutely wonderful stuff. The big thing with the autopilot, though, is I usually use the autopilot when I'm feeling like everything's okay. And I know that sounds weird, but for me, like, I'd be calling air traffic control to get flight following. Again, this is a very, very short flight, so I wouldn't be getting flight following for it. But if I was, I'd be doing all that. And then once I'm 100% satisfied that everything is okay, what I would do is I'd reach over and press that AP button once I know everything's configured. You have to press and hold, by the way, in the real world. That's how you can kind of tell those folks. With that said, of course, you'd have to come over here and you have to press the nav button and it would lock on. And if you've done your autopilot like a pro, your aircraft should not change anything. It shouldn't pick up, it shouldn't roll, it shouldn't pitch, none of that. It should just be just like that, and now we're going in the same direction we were. And it's one of those things that's going to sound dumb, but it's easier to do that in the real world than it is in the sim. The sim kind of like, you don't have the weight, and that kind of has a big impact on it as well. So the cool thing here is that this flight is very, very short. You can see we've got about 15.1 nautical miles to go. Again, if we wanted to, we could pop up Hartford VOR2, just another kind of cross-check. The reality is this is very dark in the real world. This is all light, and you can see like little white from the buildings and everything. That simply would not be something in the real world. Sometimes you get kind of lucky in the fall where visibility is a little bit better. And it's like, you know what I mean? Kind of a thing like that. But that's perfectly fine. And I'm not really worried about it at all. With this going, of course, we'd be getting ready to get into Hartford and kind of getting all of our frequencies and all those things ready. I'll go ahead and pop that out of the way for a second there. And one of the things we want to do is we want to know what all the weathers and things like that would be. Now, the nice thing about Hartford is that the frequencies are pretty easy to track here. So if I go over to my little communications, I could pop on here. We could do 121.6. Go get that one kind of ready to go. Again, very, very short flight. So that looks good to me. Pop that over. That's perfect. So that way we have Hartford Tower when we need to talk to them. And again, I could come over here and right-click on this sucker, and I could get ready for the whatever I need for my ATIS. You can see I got the wrong frequency earlier. Always check your charts. There we go. Go ahead and swap that one over there like that. Nice. And basically our goal at this particular point during the journey would be trying to figure out what the weather at Hartford is. And the reason we need to know that is because before we do anything, we have to kind of know what runway to expect. And the reality is, again, you can't do this in the real world, but you'd see Hartford a little bit here. And again, it would be a bit of a hazy experience. And this would be so dark. And you maybe get the glint off the river here as you're coming down this part. But in general, it would be very, very difficult to see. And like I said, part of the fun, as they say. So with that all taken care of, we go ahead and take a look at the ATIS. We'll go ahead and cheat a little here and open up our little screen, communication frequency 2. We could come in here. Again, you've got all sorts of different options here. Oh, that's a lot of cool things here. I don't want Bradley approach. If we wanted to get a flight following, we could do that one, and it kind of makes it a little bit easier for you. Farther from me, that works for me. Like I said, this is a bit of a calculation on their part, but that's okay. I like how it's giving me airports like, I can't land at those, but wishful thinking. If so many of these little grass strips and stuff like that. I'm not going to worry about it. We got the freaks. We'll be fine. Leave us on communication too. So at this point, of course, so we can quickly go ahead and set the mixture up. Like I said, we still have about 3 or 4 minutes to get there, so I'm not worried about it too much. About 6 minutes to go, which is plenty of time for that purpose. So what I'll do, of course, is we'll play the mixture game. We're awfully low to play the mixture game, but just for demonstration purposes, and again, depending on what your flight is. What we'd be doing is we'd be looking at RPM here. All I would do is I come down here. I pull this out a little tiny bit. I pull it out a little tiny bit. And you see how the RPM just jumped. I pull it out a little tiny bit. And what we'd be doing is we'd be looking for the RPM to start sides to go back down. Or in the case of older Cessna 172s, the engine would start getting really grumpily at you. It would go rah, 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 rah. Exactly the sound it makes, by the way. Pull that out a little more. See up to 2520. Wow, this thing's really going lean. Oh, too far. And we're just going to push it back in. So you see we're getting 2,530 RPM. So we're at our max power point. So we're actually going to come in just a little bit here and come down to 2,520 RPM. And now our mixture is fabulous. Everything for the mixture is now good to go. So normally what we do, of course, is we go call up Hartford Brainerd after getting the weather. Like I said, having a little bit of trouble kind of fiddling with it. In the real world, it's a lot easier because you can literally just do it. But you can see here, our tower is 119.6, and we're going to swing over here. We're going to get the 80 on 126.45, and we're just going to listen in. It's going to take a few moments for the radio. Here it is.
1200 Zulu. Wind to 8 tree at 6.
I really hope they're not going to do runway 29.
Sky condition clear. Temperature 15. Dew point 1 tree.
20.
Altimeter 2992. Visual runway 20 in use. Landing and departing runway 20. VFR aircraft say direction of flight. All aircraft read back hold short instructions. Advise controller on initial contact. You have Lima.
We got some Lima today. So what we do now is we got
1200.
Brandon Tower Cessna 64 is about, let's see here. You always want to get this number for you. 7 miles to the east, requesting full stop with information, Lima. And that's basically what you would do with your call. And we pop on here real quick. And again, I got plenty of room. I like to call them a little earlier than this in the real world, but that's okay. But we go request a full stop. Again, the real world. Oh, 8 miles, whatever.
2,500 feet with Lima to land. Red 64, Brainerd Tower.
So they want us to enter into a left base for runway 20. That's an interesting choice because what we're going to have to do is basically go like this to land. That's actually not unusual. So we're going to go ahead and acknowledge that. And like I said before, the autopilot there, it's just to hold the wheel. At this point, I would take over. Now, one of the crazy things about these airplanes is what you learn, of course, is you can always be like you're producing power and coming in slow and all that stuff. It's all wonderful. But the reality is you have to basically do what the plane has to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently bring the nose down on our plane here. And what's going to happen is it's going to start making a lot of wind noises around us. And basically, you'll notice I have not adjusted my power setting whatsoever. Now, the reason I've not adjusted my power setting is you're trying to keep the engine basically at the same power all the time. Now, they call it clear me to land runway 20. If it was a day this nice, you would never get clearance to land runway 20. They basically say traffic is burp, 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 and be on your way. Clear to land 20, red 64. And basically, that's all you would do. So at this point, of course, you'd be aiming right for the edge of our lovely, lovely United Technologies here. You've got your Pratt & Whitney buildings, all that stuff down here. Rensselaer Field, there's also the football stadium. And you basically be kind of going, whoa, and doing one of those things to go ahead and getting ourselves all squared away for a landing. A couple taps. You can see we're still inside of the green, even though the airplane's nose is down. Every once in a while, you might have to pull your RPM back just tiny, tiny, tiny bit just to keep it at that 2,500. And again, I try to keep it about 500 feet per minute. What I like to do now is I like to go ahead and pop on my lights just to make sure everybody I can see that I'm coming in for a landing here. I never shut my lights off. That's okay. For a flight this short, as well as having LEDs, it really doesn't matter that much. So let's go ahead and get our little heading indicator squared away for our runway heading as well. And we're going to crank this all the way over to 20. It's not quite 20 in the real world, but that's okay. That also tells me visually that I'm a bit oblique. I need to take a bit of a left turn to go ahead and correct my obliqueness here, but that's okay. Again, we're doing about 120 knots. We're about 1,700 feet up, so we're moving pretty quick. Go ahead and bring the nose down just a little bit. Need a little less altitude here, but that's okay. One of the things I've learned from a pilot, too, is, in the early days, you're like 500 feet per minute. Got to keep it there and all that. But the reality is, if you have an engine failure right now, do you see how many options I have? Like, no problem. I can get this thing down onto the ground with no concerns whatsoever. I'd be very, very confident that, I wasn't going to run out of room or anything like that. And that would be critical for that particular purpose. All right, so we're going to go ahead and lean up against the windshield. This is a fun thing you do, too, is you play the how to see where you're going game. And you pop in like that, you pop out like that, and again, you just keep that nose down. We're going to go ahead and extend our downwind just a tiny bit here. We're just a little bit too fast, but that's okay. Come swinging this way. And one of the things you don't experience in the sim that you would experience in the real world is at 120 knots when you try to move the controller. Oh! It would take a lot of physical force to do, and you kind of miss out on that, which is kind of a bummer. All right, so again, we need to come out a little wider, and the people at the air traffic control tower, if you have to advise them of this, you can. A lot of times, again, you know pretty good. Come down this way. Again, we're just looking out the window, and we need to come down a little bit more. That looks good. Again, we're just intentionally extending this, trying to avoid that drop of power there until we absolutely have to. There we go. Nice. Now we're going to come swinging into final. Now, there's a couple little tricks we can do with this plane to kind of get ready for this sequence. Bring my RPM down to about 2,100. I'm just going to pull the nose up, and that's going to suck the power out of the plane. I'm going to go ahead and click one flap with flaps once we get under 110. Look out that window. We're going a little wide. That's perfectly fine for me. All I'm trying to do is do a big ol' S-turn here to kind of bleed the last bit of speed. There we go. Now I've sucked up all the energy out of the plane. We can start dirtying the plane up for landing. So what I try to do is do as little configuration changes as I can when I'm on approach like this. So that's 77 knots. I'll go ahead and bring my last click of flaps down. And now we do our gumps checks. Gas, undercarriage, mixture, propeller, flaps, light, speed. Check, 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 chickadee, check, chickadee, check. We've already been cleared to land. One of the things I always get terrified of is they give me a clearance to land like 10 minutes ago. And I said on short final, and they give me clearance to land again. That's just a great, I don't know. Just always ask. You can always ask. So when we're doing our approach here, again, about 60 to 65 knots at this weight is fine. You don't need to come in at 70 or anything like that. And one of the annoying things about Hartford is you see how steep this approach is? Yeah, it's annoying. So one of the things you'd be doing is you'd be really using the 2-0 more than you'd be using those giant white lights. Because as you probably observe, our Pappy there is way down the runway. The other thing you'll observe is it puts us, we should be low right now, even though we're not. All right, 60 knots feels pretty good. And you'd just be basically flying the plane. The big thing for us, of course, would be trying to keep everything as stable as possible. Again, you can always add a little bit of power. You see how we're drifting because of the runway, the wind, I should say. There we go. I can't tell you how much I hate this part. 60 feet. And we're over the runway. Start smoothly pulling the power to idle. And what you do is you fly down the last couple feet, bring that nose up, and you just settle right onto the runway, just like that. Wow, this thing does not want to settle. It doesn't land like that at all. All right, a little bit of brakes.
Red 6-4, exit runway when able.
Delightful. And we are looking good. I needed a little tiny bit more flare in that landing, but that's okay.
Contact ground on 119.6.
119.6. That's a little weird, but that's a little goofy because I'm already on 119.6. They definitely got their frequencies wrong. So after you hand it off on the ground, one of the things you'd be trying to do is make sure you go all the way past the line. You wouldn't be sitting on the runway, which is perfectly fine here. Taxi to parking. I'm going to go park where I usually park, but that's perfectly fine. So after we get ourselves on the ground, you'd want to get your flaps out of the way. You'd want to go ahead and get your mixture all set and everything along those lines. One of the things you would want to do is clean up any of your lights like we have right there. They give you the taxi instructions, taxi to midfield via Delta. You go ahead and give it a little tap there. I'm not doing ACB. I'm going right to midfield. So what they would do, of course, is they give you instructions based on what they need. Usually you'd have to wait for somebody in a twin-engine plane or something like that as you're sitting there. Once we got that all taken care of, we give it a little bit of power, and we start making our way over to our whatever our destination is. So in this particular case, we're keeping it nice and simple today. Now, what you don't see here, these buildings are a little bit shorter, by the way, in the real world. But while you be taking this turn here, you don't realize how narrow this little piece of taxiway is. See how our wingtips are over the grass here? This is one of those things that adds to your, man, this could be dangerous kind of a thing like that. Give it just a tiny bit of power there. And again, it takes very, very, very little to get this thing going. And this taxiway, this whole tarmac here would be an absolute kind of wreck as far as bumps and stuff like that goes. Part of the fun, as I say. And again, you'd be sinking. There'd be like, the little sewer grates and everything like that. It'd be an absolute mess. Okay, so go ahead and kick that rudder over here, and we start lining up for our lovely letter T here. Now, what you don't realize here is, this is kind of fun. What part of the T are you supposed to stop on? Now, the interesting thing is you'll see this letter T, but the T is for the wings. So a lot of times what happens is you're basically getting yourself all kind of squared away on this T here. A little bit more. Is there be another little yellow marker on the ground? Like you can't see it right there as we stop, and there'd be a yellow marker where the wheel is. So what we do is we engage the parking brake there. Remember, the engine's still really, really hot, but it's cooled down fast, and you can see that. One of the things you'd probably have done already after landing is pop open your windows again. With all that taken care of, now it's time to secure the airplane. Go ahead and pop off the avionics. You don't want to be doing that. What you would do is you pull this all the way out, and I usually push the throttle forward as it kind of runs out. RPM stop right away. You're going to get a big angry warning. You can see the propeller has stopped. We disengage the key just like that to make sure that is off. We can shut off our bacon. We can shut off our switches. We'd swing this over to this side. In this aircraft, normally what you'd be doing is popping that out. I can shut off the standby battery. And you can see that would have been one heck of a really fun flight there. So then, of course, you climb out. And I can't tell you how weird it is to step back on the ground like your legs are all shaky after that flight. And then it'd be a matter of kind of running around, locking the plane up, and enjoying.